One question, an amazing lineup of CEOs, founders, and experts. This is Marketing for the Now.
Super excited.
Can you hear me? To 50 it.
Thank you so much.
That made me feel.
Thanks for having me.
I love how both of you, Eliza, for your back.
So glad to be
You really
Marketing for Now.
Gary.
Hello.
Can you believe it's the end of 2023?
Wait a minute. What shirt are you wearing?
Oh, look at me. This is my
love that.
favorite. It's hard to pick a favorite, but she is my ambitious angel. I have her not only in a t-shirt, but I have the kids version, which by the way works for an adult. If you get the 2XL white sweatshirt, highly recommend. Very soft.
Let's give a big shout out to everybody tuning in. I see YouTube representing Kevin Jordan. Good to see you. Last of a Dying Seed TV. I see you. I see LinkedIn coming in. Oscar Hernandez, Christina E coming in. I see that it's live on Twitter and Facebook as well. So we'll see if those come in here in the chat. But I see Michael F. Big shout out. I also have Twitch live on mute here.
Oh, amazing.
So we can unmute them actually. Cool. Let's rock and roll. What do we got today?
We got lucky 7 speakers today, and we're going to be talking about 2024. What's in store? And first up, I'm going to have you guess, Gary, who this is. It's kind of it's a sizable bio, if you will. So this dude is a successful serial entrepreneur who sold.
I think it's Jesse Itzler.
Oh, rats! You got it already. Yes. He's this guy's insane, but positively insane. He's an ultra marathon runner who's biked across the country. He's founder of All Day Running. He's got 4 kids. He's a former rapper who managed Run DMC. Oh my gosh, he's married to Sarah Blakely. And most importantly, maybe, at least for right now, he is the creator of the Big Ass Calendar Club. I'm hoping we hear a little bit more about that.
Jesse, how are you, my man?
Gary, you got a green pen. I got a green pen.
We are so fucking in sync, my dude.
We are so locked in right now, unscripted. We're both green pen guys.
You know what? I've always known that we were locked in, but this might have been the final fucking cherry on top.
I love it. I got to get you an All Day Running cap, and then we're really locked in.
I'll rock it, my friend. Jess, for the 4 people that don't know who you are, give us 1/2 second on that, and let's go and chop up what's in store for 24.
Yeah, I've had an unconventional business journey. I started out in the music business, as mentioned, as a rapper. Then I had a private jet company called Marquis Jet, sold it to Warren Buffett's NetJets. A coconut water company called Zico, sold it to Coca-Cola. A fitness company, sold it to iFit. I've had 5 exits, and I'm a dad of 4. Yeah, that's me.
Actually, real quick on that, for people that are going into 2024 thinking about selling their company, as someone who's had the experience of 5 exits, which is remarkable, what's the biggest lesson you've learned across all 5 of those? Like, what's the common theme? What's a watch out as the people that are on here that are either fortunate enough to be setting up an exit that are excited about, or maybe even more concerning, and maybe you can speak to this, maybe some of the 5 you had was a little bit, I'm going to assume, Jess, with 5 exits, some were a little bit more front-footed than back-footed, right? Like sometimes you're selling because the demand is there and you're just getting a huge multiple. Yeah. Other times you're like, man, even if the company's fine, if you or the management team don't have it in the fire anymore, or you see the tailwinds, like, give us a little wisdom on being on your front or back foot as you go into 2024, pondering an exit of your business.
Well, the first thing I would say is that none of the businesses that I sold, I had any experience in going into it. I had no prior experience in aviation, music, coconut water. And for a lot of people, entrepreneurs on this call, that could be a great concern. But for me, it was a blessing because it guaranteed that my products, my companies, my services would be different than all my competition. So for many people, that's a gift, not having experience, because it means you're going to do things differently. I always say, like, if no one taught you how to do your job, like, how would you do it?
That's always been the biggest strength of my career. I call it fresh eyes. Like, my whole career, the wine business, the advertising. I mean, I knew nothing about advertising when I started VaynerMedia. I think fresh eyes, if you're a capable operator, are dangerous eyes, AKA give you actually an advantage because you see shit that the people that are incumbents can't see.
Yeah. I would say the second theme for me is, like, in all those businesses, even though they were so different, like, the common theme was I poured my soul into it, and people feel soul. You can't outsource it. You can't fake it. And there was just incredible passion behind all of that. Any goal, I emptied the tank and poured my soul into it. As far as selling the companies, you know, for me, I had no experience in that. My dad owned the plumbing supply house. We never sold companies in my family.
Yeah.
I was fortunate to realize that that's not my skill set, and find, you know, brokers, companies that could help me, lawyers that could assist me in that journey. So knowing your weakness going to 2024, and when you're in a position
Self-awareness.
to hire your weakness, you do it. And
Yeah, actually, real quick, I just want to give a quick shout out. Shari Woodstein said, clean up your mouth on LinkedIn, clean up your mouth. You shouldn't be using the one word you said a few minutes ago. I'm leaving this and will never go to any other your lives that you might do. Shari, I just want to apologize. I'm incapable of not being myself, and I apologize that the cursing didn't hit, but I wish you the best holiday. And I think back to your point about like self-awareness, I also think humility going into 2024. I'm incredibly empathetic for Shari's comment right now on LinkedIn. Some people are not comfortable with cursing the way maybe I am. And I don't view that as she doesn't get it or she's from, you know, the old school. I actually think you bring up a beautiful thing of like self-awareness of what you're not good at. I also think a big thing that people can really build on is, I think humility is lacking. I think when people see the world differently, we get very confrontational. I wasn't being condescending or silly just now. I'm actually genuinely apologetic to Shari. I want to stay my way. I feel comfortable in my authenticity, but that doesn't give me the inability to have the humility to apologize if somebody randomly popped up on LinkedIn and saw this and didn't enjoy it. And I think we need more of that as well. And I think self-awareness and humility work very nicely together. Thoughts on that, Jess?
well, I mean, you come into a Gary Vee thing, you know it's going to be PG-13 or R.
Yeah, and by the way, she might not, you know, it seems like she was here for the first time and didn't know what she, you know, that I might have a little bit more of a potty mouth, and so I just want to do that. Anyway, just this big ass calendar. I saw Zach walking around with it. Actually, why don't you tell everybody I see it? I'm gonna go grab. Actually, Justin, if you don't mind, grab that big ass calendar. Jess, what is this thing?
I'm a big planner, so we're talking about what's in store for 2024. And yeah, so Gary, check this out. I have mine here too.
By the way, good job taking out the SS here.
I didn't want anyone to leave. I didn't want anyone to leave.
You don't want to lose anybody on the chat,
I don't
Jess.
want to lose people here, man. I don't want to lose people here. I appreciate you bringing that up. And, you know, as we talk about 2024, before I even go there, Gary, my word for 2024, like this is a great time, December, right now, to prepare for next year. And I think it's really important for everybody here. I'll explain that in a second, Gary, to go into 2024 light. Go in as light as you can. And for me, I use this time right now to clear my desks, delete my emails, clean out my closet. Like I want to declutter and feel light going into 2024.
I love that. I'm a fan.
I don't want to go in heavy. I want to get as light as I can
This is why gratitude is my word for 24. You're doing it right physically, and I believe in the minimalism, the simplicity. I want people to go light emotionally. Why not be grateful for what you have instead of all the energy that everyone's putting into what they don't have?
Right. And so for me, that's really important. I want to come into the year fresh, but you know, you mentioned the calendar. I'll plug it real quick. This is my entire 2024 already planned. My year's already baked. This is all my trips, speeches, date nights. Like I feel like I'm 55, Gary. I'm 55. And I feel like as you get older, creating newness is really hard. Like where does newness come from, man? We live in routine. So I feel like if we don't plan it, usually it won't happen. And I'm really aggressive with my planning because if I don't prioritize me, my calendar fills up with work, Zoom calls, and stuff that I don't even at the end of the year, like it doesn't mean anything to me. So I try to plan my life and in 2024 before all my meetings and stuff and let as much work's always going to fill in. It's always happening.
Always.
But I put the important stuff that I want to do. So at the end of 2024, I'm going to the end of 2024 now that I have stuff that I can show for it. You know, I want to be able to, at the end of 2023, what did you do? What did you accomplish? You worked your ass off. Don't leave me for saying the word ass. You worked your ass off, but what do you have to show for it in the 365 days? And there's an old Japanese ritual called the misogi. Yep. And the notion around the misogi is you do one big year defining thing every year. So it's really important. Like if you could look back, this is for everybody, and say, like, if I ask, what'd you do in 2015, 2017, 2019? You should be able to rattle off, oh, I launched a book in 2015. 2023, I rode my bike across America. And that one thing of having a big year-defining thing, to me, is critical. Because if you live another 30, 40 years, what do you got, 112, 120 in you?
I'm 48. I'm going for at least 100. I feel like I'm got 52, and like I feel like I'm starting to maybe look at going into halftime. But I have like real things to do here, brother.
You might have 60 in you.
I agree. 30, 40. I'd be pissed. By the way, if I pass within 30, 40 years, when I get up there, the first thing I'm going to say is like, yo, fuck Jesse Itzler. He was the one that fucked this up.
I didn't even mean to put it in the universe, but you're defending it so much. God, I appreciate it. When you go at the end of your journey, Gary, what are people going to say about you? What do you want people to say about you?
That I gave more than I took.
Have you always been like that?
Yeah, long before anybody knew who the hell I was. Like, I wish some junior high or high school friends are in the chat right now and be like, he said that shit before there was the internet. I've always been, I had the all-time mother and the all-time circumstance of immigrant life and humility and happiness. And it just like, it was over before it started. You know, like I just got very fortunate. Somebody said in the chat just now, Gary, you have very heavy Christian values. What do you think about that? What do I think about that? I think that makes sense. I'm very aware that my stuff is old school,
Yeah.
I'm old school. Like I'm a modern dude. I do new technology and all this. I'm hyper. I can curse. I get all that. But man, in my soul, boy, do I like people.
Do you take a lot of time planning for the upcoming year?
It's funny.
Do you have a process?
Yeah, I have I know my yes, I have a process. It's called a team. I have like a meeting in my schedule. Like this is literally at 12:30 on my schedule. I'm going to review the next week, 2 weeks. Like I'm in it because of the way I roll, but I'm also a big buyer of your macro thesis of like big things. Like I during my holidays, I basically give one thoughtful thing of like what relationships or what impact do I want to have on the year. Jess, listen, I need to get you on Podcast with Friends or a solo podcast because we have too much to talk about. I'm already 3 minutes late. I have to abruptly kick you out because everyone's yelling at me behind the scenes. I love you. I love your calendar. I love your family. I love the way you roll. I love the way you impact. I wish you nothing but health and happiness, brother.
I can't wait till we have lunch and dinner together 65 years from now, Gary. I'll be 127.
There we go, brother. I love you. See ya.
All right.
Such fire. All right, next up, we got Jason Angrisani, great friend of ours, who's the Chief Marketing and Communications Officer at Cantor Fitzgerald, and he came from Bloomberg. And we were just talking, Gary, a little bit about Jason's been playing some soccer with his kids. You might want to ask him a little bit about that, too.
I love that. How are you, brother?
Good, man. How are you? I was really enjoying the conversation with Jesse. I could have tuned into that all day.
Jace, I appreciate that. Brother, let's go right into it. Let's go in a different direction. We kind of went spiritual there. I like the whole yin and yang stuff. Talk to me about the business world. Obviously, sitting on top of such a premier business entity, there's a lot that I feel in the air of uncertainty going into 2024, an election year. People are emotionally on tilt in America and globally. There's some other big elections around the world. So that's in the air. Interest rates, you're hearing momentum of like coming down, they've been high. Every company I talk to is struggling with the remote working environment. Almost every business is feeling the effects of less productivity in this environment. And that kind of is starting to hit the fan. I literally had a CEO of a major company cry to me that she's going to have to let go of a lot of people because in hindsight, she didn't make the workforce come back to the office enough and the business can't sustain. And she thought she was doing the right thing. And now she's got and it hit me hard because that's what I'm going through. Think about my universe. So there's a lot in the air. What's in store from 2024 from your perspective on these big macro business trends?
Well, let's start with people, because I think in 2024, we have to start investing back in people. There was huge hiring trends in 2020 and 2021, inflating the workforce, focusing on remote engagement. And that was all well and good. But then you're seeing over the last year, a lot of layoffs happening, rifts happening. There's just a lot of people freaking out about what's in store for them going forward. And even for me personally, I left a great role at Bloomberg. I was there for 13 years to take on a brand new challenge here at Cantor with a smaller team, a bigger scope, and a whole lot of other things to worry about. But the thing I always go back to is if you can surround yourself with really good people and empower those people to make decisions and really bring them along on your journey for planning and success, you're going to be successful. So that's what I'm always focused on. How do I get people on the same page, believing that they're contributing to what we're trying to do as an organization going forward, not just having it be me dictating the direction, and bringing the leaders along so they can bring other folks along, and we start to build a sense of camaraderie and togetherness. Then that leads to people wanting to come into the office, wanting to be together. Because listen, like we could argue all day long about productivity levels during the pandemic. Yeah, people were more productive, but they didn't connect. They didn't collaborate. They were on the same page. And in order for you to feel like this isn't just a job that you're showing up to every day and commuting X amount of time, my commute's 3 hours a day to and from work, right? But I do it because I want to connect with people. I want to hear their ideas. I want to collaborate on problems that we have. I want to commiserate on how miserable the commute was and all that stuff. But focusing on how do we make them better at their jobs, better colleagues, better people, better parents, better brothers and sisters, and you know, that's what I really focus on. People to me is everything.
Yeah, there is nothing else. How do you think everything gets done? I'm with you. I think the other thing is that a lot of business owners don't realize that people have options. Even if, look, I think we'll see a continuation of lack of hiring because like businesses do business things. Like they're going to have to let go of people before they miss bank covenants and don't have a credit line and then fully go out of business and all 800 people have to, like, it's just real life, right? Like, you know, like I see it in small business, like people are gonna, you know, even if they have 10 employees, like it's just business are gonna do business things, but humans have more options than ever. The side hustles are becoming real businesses. And so there's when I think about start, stop, continue, you know, start trying to build something for yourself that doesn't make you vulnerable to the business. Stop being just concerned and fear-based and start creating that, and then continue the things that are making you happy because you really have a lot of control. And that's both for the businesses, but more importantly for the employees.
We have to be, it's confidence, right? You know, as marketers, you always hear the argument of, all right, you know, is it a cost center? Is it a growth driver? I don't even subscribe to that. At the end of the day, marketing is not a back office function, right? It's not a support function. It's a growth driver for any organization that wants to be serious about moving forward. And, you know, in the B2B land that I've lived in throughout pretty much all of my career, sometimes that's a difficult conversation to have with CEOs or other, you know, COOs, CFOs, all the people that we have to deal with on a daily basis. But it's having the confidence to be able to tell your story and articulate what the team is doing against those business objectives that are critical. If anybody that's ever worked with me will say one thing, which is I'm constantly focused on results, value, and impact. Like if we're not adding value to what the business is trying to achieve, we shouldn't be doing it, period, end of story, right? Nowadays, that conversation's a little bit different. It's more values-based. So we're thinking about the intersection between brand and demand. How do we instill values throughout the customer journey, throughout everything that we're doing, trying to connect what the business is all about and what the company is all about to the bottom line impact. And you know, at Bloomberg, we invested a ton in the foundation. Mike invested a ton in his foundation. And we always tried to connect the dots between what we were doing on a philanthropic standpoint to what the business, what it meant to work with Bloomberg as an organization. At Cantor, it's really no different. You know, the resiliency of this firm post 9/11 has been tremendous, and connecting those dots to what we're actually trying to be in the market. A lot of people don't even know what we do anymore. And that's part of the reason that brought me on, and to try to change that narrative. But it's not just about talking about the X's and O's of the business. It's about connecting the dots with what this firm is, what it means, what any firm is, what it means to people, how it connects with people, because people want to do business with brands that they trust, period, end of story. And if you
how human behavior has always worked, whether it's people or businesses, always. Final thought before we get out of here, brother. What is a big opportunity you see for employees, employers, businesses, side hustles? What's something that's got you kind of jazzed as opportunity in 24?
Right. It's I hate to be cliche about it, but it's, you know, experiment with AI, try new things out, dive into technology. It's what we're going to be facing in the future. And you're either going to be ahead of the game or you're going to be behind the times. And you can try a bunch of things, fail, but there's so much opportunity out there to to be experimental, do it. Dive in and don't be afraid to fail.
I love it, brother. I wish you a happy holiday, Jason.
You too. Thanks for the time, Gary. Appreciate it. See you soon.
Take care, bro.
Next up, we've got Lynn Teo. She's the CMO of Northwestern Mutual. She just joined over a year ago, and she already won the 2023 Financial Marketer of the Year. Congratulations, Lynn.
Thank you. Thank you. And big shout out to Jason for giving me the full 10.
Lynn, how are things?
Things are awesome. I'm here in sunny Milwaukee where it's cold. But you know what? You lean into the people around you, and if they, bring some light, that's all you need.
I love it. So let's talk about start, stop, and continue in 24. If I give you that framework,
Yep.
what do you think people should stop doing going into 24?
Yeah.
What's your opinion on things they should start doing? And what's your opinion on things that people should continue doing? And or if you want to take it in a different angle, as you think about your 2024, what are you going to start doing? What are you going to stop doing? And what are you going to continue doing?
All right. So let's go for it. I'll start with the stop. So the first thing I would say to stop doing is isolated marketing activities. Stop doing them. Stop creating microsites that aren't connected to the architecture or the fabric of your other digital properties. Stop creating one-off events that don't have a planful way of thinking before, during, and after. Who are you sending the invites to? What actions do you want them? Some of these events are expensive events, from wine tasting to chocolate making.
Hold on.
Say, oh, yes? Go for it, Terry.
No stopping the wine tastings, Lynn. My dad is watching this. I'm about to get a text from Sasha saying, "Who's this Lynn?" Unacceptable.
No. It's not about stopping the wine tasting. It's about thinking carefully about what you're doing after the wine tasting.
By the way, I'm fully in agreement that in the marketing world, way too much one-offs with no cohesion or really rhyme or reason. I mean, look, I don't mind things that look potentially as a one-off if it's trying to win relevance with a specific consumer segmentation. But I agree with you. I think there's a little bit too much spray and pray, throw against the wall and see what sticks.
Exactly. And to expand on that a little further, think about your org structures. Any marketing leader tuning in right now, think about where you're duplicating efforts, right? I found tremendous success in creating deep specializations within the org structure of a marketing team. So centers of excellence, right? Because you can borrow that skill set across multiple places instead of duplicating that function within every single one of them. So I encourage you to look under the covers. So that's my stop. Let's go to start.
Okay.
And I love using acronyms, and I'm just going to make one up on the fly. It's called the MFO.
Okay.
Funnel obsession.
Okay.
I want to ask all marketers to take a look at your funnels. Funnels are still relevant. It just gives you a framework to think about how your activities link from one to another. What I'm seeing a lot is investments in top and bottom of funnel, right? And I think the mistake here is letting your CPAs, your CPLs be the thing that you live and die by. I understand that there are times you want to hit right at the bottom of the funnel because that's where intent is high, motivation is high, they know your brand.
It's also measurable for a lot of organizations.
Totally, right? Because a lot of us are still in the last touch attribution model.
Which is why places like Google get extra credit for other parts of the funnel doing the work. You hear about something in your Spotify playlist as a pre-roll, and then you grab your phone and go to Google and type it in because many people use Google as their browser. And then all of a sudden back home in marketing land, you think Google brought you the customer when in fact it was your Spotify ad.
That's exactly right. Your Spotify ad is your first point of touch. But then there was a bunch of other nurturing activities. So I would say, and then we all know the story and the constant refrain of spending in our top of funnel, right? Brand stories. But the question I would ask is, where's your brand story going, right? So what's the 6 other touches you need to design for? And bear in mind, those touches might be very different for different segments, different subsegments. So think of yourselves, marketers, like an architect, right? You're building a house. You've got the roof, you've got the rooms, you've got the bed that you sleep on, right? So I would say MFO, mid-funnel obsession, is what I'd like you all to think and start doing in 2024. And then we'll do the last one, Gary. We'll do continue.
Okay.
And a lot of people might be surprised hearing me because, my foray into marketing started in the digital space, but I would say bring traditional back. What's old is new again, right? And I'm a firm believer that there's no binary good marketing tactics, bad marketing tactics. I've just invested in a sponsorship. I've looked at email marketing differently. And God help us, direct mail. It is still relevant, guys.
Well, it's interesting which ones you chose, right? Because you chose sponsorship, which in a lot of ways, as an awareness play, I like. And I don't know are you talking about sports jersey? You're talking about something else?
Sports jersey. We just sponsored the Milwaukee Brewers, and that decision was made after thoughtful consideration.
That I like because people actually watch the baseball game and will actually see the impression and the reinforcement and the awareness, right?
Correct.
Direct mail, even though it doesn't convert the way it did 20 years ago, there's a lot of direct mail campaigns that the company got the return that they were looking for on the investment. Do I believe perfect? Pay attention to the words I'm saying. Do I believe perfect Facebook execution, creative and media, outperforms direct mail for the same function? I do, because I've tested them both enough over the last 3-4 years. Do I believe, though, that it is very possible to make a direct mail campaign work? Yes. Sponsorship? Yes. What was the third one? Email?
Well,
yes. Like you said, traditional. And what's interesting is sports jerseys in America is brand new.
Yeah.
Obviously worked in Europe for a long time.
Right.
Email as traditional is kind of enjoyable because it's still only a 25-year phenomenon, but check, respect. And direct mail is probably the most traditional.
But you're missing the thing here, Gary. It's a combination. Email timed with direct mail. That's the magic. When do you time it? When do you surround your target audience with it? I think that's the unlock. And then going back to sponsorships, when we came up with the thinking, wasn't just a jersey. It was how it intersects with the community efforts of both foundations. How do you drive online demand, right? How do you activate my field? My field is my growth engine. So how do I bring my field?
I think the thing you're touching on, Lynn, that I'm such a buyer of is I love old is new. I mean, all my content right now is that we need to respect our elders. I think we've put youth on a pedestal too much and have completely lost our respect for our elders.
Exactly.
That being said, there are people, when they hear that statement, that will continue to hold up overpriced marketing behaviors on an ideology. The things you just mapped out, on December 5th, 2024, there are multiple executions that the money is worth the execution. Exactly. On the flip side, if your what's old is new again tactic is to do banner ad advertising on the internet like it did and crushed in the late 90s and early 2000s, I would argue very heavily against that in comparison to what social media platforms give you in the same game at a much lower cost. So I think to the thing that I want to point out for the people that are listening is I love that overall statement, but wasting money in any shape or form in marketing is a bad idea.
Is never in vogue. I think that's a wonderful thought.
Putting regular television commercials on network and cable at the costs that they are today is asinine.
Yeah. Agreed. It's all about connecting the dots and, squeezing the best value out of your investments. So there you have it. Start, stop, continue for 24.
Lynn, I hope you have a very healthy and happy holiday.
You as well, Gary. Thanks for having me.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Lynn. Gary, next we have the CMO of Xerox, Dena, who has just gone through a big rebranding. Hi, Dena.
Hi, Gary. How are you?
Good, Dena. Why don't we actually start with that? Tell us about this big rebranding. Obviously Xerox is so iconic. I'm sure for everybody who's watching and listening in the future, there might be some fun curiosity about that. So let's start there actually, and happy holidays.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for having me. So Xerox is this iconic brand, legacy and of innovation and heritage and really transforming the workplace. But we've got to reintroduce ourselves. We've got to reintroduce ourselves to new audiences. And we've also got to tell people about the things that we're doing now that they don't know that we're doing, right? Synonymous with copy, became a verb, right? A Xerox brand became a verb.
Yep.
How do you disassociate from that thing that made you a household name and make sure people know about the new stuff you're doing? So what we did is we launched an integrated brand and demand gen campaign, something I recommend everybody look at starting to do in 24. You got limited resources. You can't afford to have siloed brand and demand gen campaigns, right? So we launched an integrated one. It's called We Make Work Work, and it's about explaining kind of what we're doing today. The world's changed. The workplace has changed. We're hybrid. We're stressed. We're distributed. Technology has changed. And so a lot of the services we have today are about enabling you to be productive in today's workforce. And so
how much of a challenge do you think it is to get people educated on what something like a Xerox is up to now, when we all have, if we're over 25, it's likely we all have a very specific thing that we're thinking. Do you feel like, from your perspective, that is a bigger challenge than even being a brand that no one knows? Or are they both kind of similar because they're opposite sides of the pillow, in the middle and is a little bit easier than a full rebrand or building?
Yeah. I think sometimes it is more challenging, right? And you mentioned the 25 and over. We actually still got to get stronger in the 25 to 44 demographic. 45 and over, we're really strong.
Yeah, that's very fair. Very fair.
So it is hard. You've got to reintroduce yourself. And so that's why this year's campaign, it really kind of over-indexed on being, we use some of our heritage. We use the bold Xerox red and got it front and center in front of people, but we put a modern twist and use really punchy, witty copy that we've never used before to intrigue people into learning more about what we actually do.
Dena, where are you executing that? Because I think I'm always, just to jump in, I've been thinking a lot about the fact that most brands are stuck in a campaign framework in big brand land. And for me, my religion is, man, if you're not marketing every day, you have no shot, which is why I'm obsessed with social media advertising. I think people grossly underestimate what day-to-day content and social means. And when you think about such an iconic brand, and when you talk about, I want to win 45 and under, when I think about their consumption of this device over everything, is it a challenge to get your constituents around the table in the organization to understand the needed investment, not in digital, but in modern digital? Because this digital can mean a lot. Like, I was just on in the last call, and you saw she was using digital as like email as going back, because digital can get very, very traditional and very old school. To me, do you feel great about what's going on with Xerox from a social media day in and day out content, or are you doing more of a matching luggage of the campaign, or where are you on this journey?
Yeah. So first of all, you've got to have a mix, right? You've got to be multi-channel, and you've got to get into these modern places. So we have a mix. And one of the things I was going to say, people need to stop playing it safe. You've got to test, you've got to fail, you've got to iterate, you've got to optimize based on the data that comes out of what you're doing. Like out of home, digital actually overperformed for us and gave us a lot of value. Connected TV spots. I heard you say you'd never buy cable. We didn't either, but we tried some connected TV.
I love fast channels, connected TV. I mean, all of the modern television channels, their capabilities on the targeting and media buying look much more like social media, and I think are bringing really interesting dividends. I have a lot of passion that we have to stop making videos that people don't want to watch. This phenomenon of making commercials has to finally hit ahead in our industry. These videos are not things, nobody on this Twitch channel right now, nobody in these streams, like they do not want to watch these boring 30-second videos. And this, Dena, as a senior marketer, they're freaking expensive.
They're super expensive. They got to be relevant. They've got to be they got to be emotional. They got to be relevant. They got to capture the audience. We had 97% rate of full completion view in our connected TV spots because we went totally different, right? We focused on what do you want to get home? You want to close your laptop? You want to get home in time to read your kid a bedtime story or get to their soccer game? That's what matters at the end of the day. That's what you want to see in an ad that piques your interest. So we're definitely,
I'm sorry to interrupt. In an ad, just my big thing that I'm trying to get all 2,000 people at VaynerMedia understand, let's make videos people want to watch. To your point, there's some people that want to see a video that inspires an emotional truth that they want to get home right now while they're at work and they see it on LinkedIn and they want to get home. On the flip side, there's some people that just want to see something funny.
Yep.
There's but real funny, not like the bad jokes we put in commercials. I'm talking more like SNL, or a music video, or like just a video people want to watch.
Yeah, we're testing TikTok, right? Like, so we had to do that education internally here, and like we need to get paid TikTok ads, right?
Right. And think about how you said that. We're testing TikTok. TikTok has dominated for the last 5 years.
I know, but not for our brand. So exactly where you got to get the iconic brand, educate the people and the stakeholders inside on what's going on outside and where you need to be to get to the audiences that you want to reach, right?
I love that. Dena, let me ask you a quick question back to as we go into 24. I want to go backwards a little bit. I kind of like this concept of giving people flowers while they're still alive. I feel like we say all these nice things after people pass. I think this would be a fun moment. You are the CMO of Xerox. You have an iconic marketing job. I'm sure at times the little you, if you think about it, you're like, I'm the CMO of Xerox. Can we give some flowers to maybe when you were a young marketer, maybe someone who said something in a meeting or did something, like if I said a mentor or someone maybe might not even be your biggest mentor, but somebody said something in one meeting and it penetrated your mind and your soul and your perspective and you built off of it. Who can we give some flowers to in this one-on-one that you think were maybe an instrumental? Please.
Yeah, the person who brought me to Xerox, actually, Mike Feldman, he brought me in a different role and he tapped me for this role when there was the opportunity, and he pushed me to make sure I raised my hand and got in the game. And he's an amazing person. And you know what he told me? He said, this is going to be the best time of your career. Have fun. You're going to enjoy it. And I'm enjoying it. I have a great team.
I love that. Tell me one thing that you want to continue that you learned in 23, either as Dena the human being or as the marketer, as we wrap up this interview. Like, what's something you want to continue?
It's both. I'm like a super data-driven person as a marketer and as a leader. And so one of the things I want to continue is really optimizing based on what the data is telling us, right? So we've had this whole journey of getting as much data and analytics into how we're spending our money as possible, because you've got to be able to shift. You've got to be agile. All of us are dealing with budgets that aren't as big as we would like them to be, right? There's, realities out there in the market right now. We're all crunched. So you've got to use the data and the analytics to just keep optimizing and optimizing and optimizing.
It's funny, you touched on something I always laugh about. When I first got into marketing 14 years ago, I knew nothing about Fortune 500 marketing. I'd done marketing my whole life, and invested in the platforms that I thought would define the future of marketing, but I hadn't been in the game in Madison Avenue. And one of my first meetings, the marketer said, Gary, my budgets, it's like a real problem. And I felt all bad. And I grew up in a family business. So the person was like, really, just like really like, oh my God, my budgets. And so I was like, man, I felt really bad. I'm like, oh man. And I was like, well, how much budget do you have? And she was like, oh my God, I only have $14 million this year. I was like, $14 million? I'm like, she was on a bubblegum brand. I was like, I can get every human on earth to eat your bubblegum for $14 million. I think, sometimes us in big business land, Fortune 500 land, we worry about our budgets. And so many people watching right now on streams, their budget for their small business or startup is $100,000 for the year. And so I think you can make money go a long way. Obviously, you have a big task. You have a very big task in getting people to understand the modern Xerox, but we are heavily rooting for you, and I hope you have a great, great holiday.
Thank you. Happy holidays, Gary. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Take care.
Thank you, Gary. Thanks for joining us. Have a great afternoon. All right. We'll see you soon. Next up, we're going to welcome Haley Grant. She leads strategy at Vayner Consulting. And oh my gosh, you are gorgeous, Haley.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Andrea.
We're excited. We're pretty fired up to have Erin Dwyer up next. And I have to tell you, she's from Matter of Fact. I have been using this every day. And I was telling her that it actually makes me feel like glowy inside and out. So I'm a new biggest fan. And I love the fact, Erin, that you, so first of all, this brand was started by former K-pop star Paul Bike. And Erin, little fun fact, was a professional dancer. Like
Previous life.
all the things. Previous life. She's also VP. She was formerly VP of digital at Drunk Elephant and Way. So she's cut her teeth in a pretty competitive category. So very excited to have you join us, Erin, and I'll let Haley take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Andrea. And Erin, I'm so excited to be here with you today. And hi, everybody who's been joining Marketing for the Now today. What's in store for 2024? I'm so excited to talk to you, Erin. I know there's so many things that we want to cover today. A little bit about me and why I'm talking to you today with everybody is that in Vayner Consulting, we always talk about representing the consumers in every single room that you're in. And no industry has a bigger importance for consumers than beauty and skin. And so as we talk a little bit about start, stop, and continue, I know there's like 3 burning questions that I have for you that I would love to hear your perspective on. We're going to talk about consumers and a little bit about your discovery, your point of view on some of the creative learnings this year, and then business. And so in true Vayner fashion, I would love to start a little bit about the consumers. Maybe if you'd like to share some like learnings and discoveries that you've had this year, having interacted with people, thinking about that start, stop, and continue in the consumer bucket.
Yeah, I think consumers is a really interesting space because, you know, I'm old and you grew up in marketing where you kind of created these target audiences like primary and secondary, and you built these buckets. And what's interesting now is that might be the person who ultimately purchases the product, but how they engage with your content and who that audience might be. You're seeing a blurring of boomers making content that Gen X, millennials, Gen Z are watching. You've got Gen Z making content that boomers and Gen X are watching. And so there's a lot of blurred lines where you used to buy TV media based on, you know, it's American Idol and this is the age group and this is who watches it. But now what they watch isn't always like what you would expect. And so there's this blurring of that that we have to pay attention to. And there's an importance of like figuring out your own target audience, knowing who that buyer is, but then also figuring out where they are on all the different platforms, what they're watching, and kind of having an open mind of who your target audience is.
Yeah, absolutely. Even thinking, I love the idea of like the halo effect in especially beauty. Like my mom has amazing skin. So I'm like watching the content that's like, how do the 60-year-olds keep their skin like that? So I can start now. Is there anything you've seen in terms of like the generation sort of conspiring in skincare?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we've seen that for years. I mean, I got into skincare at a young age. I was passionate about it because I read books about skin and learning how it's like the largest organ. And, you know, you watch what your mom does or what an aunt does or a grandmother does. And that kind of, now you've got these dual influencers and creators who are moms and daughters who are making content together. You're seeing young kids get into skincare so much sooner because of TikTok. And they're, you know, Drunk Elephant's done exceptionally well in that space. And they are almost more like the Beanie Babies of our time, or like Tamagotchi. Am I totally aging myself right now?
Right.
Or Pokemon, which my kids are into.
Pokemon cards, yeah.
And now people are so into skincare that it's something that they're almost collecting and they're really passionate about. And there's also a massive shift in how much people are educated, and they're asking incredible questions because there's so much information out there, which has its pros and cons. People are walking into Sephora's and asking really difficult questions that we wouldn't have asked when I was, you know, 18 to 24. So it's definitely interesting to see the evolution of knowledge as well, which really pushes the industry forward, which I think is pretty awesome.
Yeah, I feel like that's like a really good segue to talk about sort of the business side of like thinking about your own business. And how do you, just based on your experiences in Drunk Elephant and Way and those things, like knowing that that's the reality, how do you think differently about like the social advertising space, knowing that that's what's going on with consumers?
Yeah, it's hard. And you're also kind of connected to the algorithm. So you might know, and you could be a luxury brand or a prestige brand, and you might know who your consumer is. But if the content you make doesn't play to whatever the algorithm is currently in favor of,
Yeah.
it won't work. And that algorithm changes constantly. And then at the same time, you're dealing with, well, my audience who might eventually buy, let's say they're an elder millennial, they're 30 to 40. And so they live on Instagram and TikTok, but TikTok's heavily more Gen Z content. Are they watching that Gen Z content? So it's kind of this constant dance. You're constantly in test, learn, deploy. I think that there's a big shift happening in trying to find your audience, but also in how those platforms are optimizing for purchase now as well. So with TikTok Shop happening and how that impacts what you're placing there versus us as an omnichannel brand with Sephora. So it's kind of like it's an ever-changing game, which makes it exciting and fun, but it's not as easy to plan for as it might have been 30 years ago when you were building TRPs in like frequency buy.
And like thinking about creatively how you show up in all of those different platforms and formats, and like knowing that Matter of Fact is like one of the most beautiful brands I've ever seen. If you have not been to the website, guys, by the way, please go, because it's like, I want to buy all of it. But you are a high-end, you're luxury. And then just thinking about how you show up on TikTok versus Instagram, what have you learned, and what do you think you'll do more of in 2024 to sort of balance that luxury versus how people show up?
It's so hard because UGC performs traditionally exceptionally well, especially in our space. People want to see people who look like them, who don't, look over polished like it's some big production. But as a luxury or prestige brand, there's an integrity to the brand you're building that you're trying to stay true to. And it's, again, a dance of, we want to get the conversion and the awareness, but we want to stay true to who we are. And so I think what we learned this year was actually UGC didn't work as well for us as we had anticipated. However, we're seeing shifts in that again with the algorithm. So now we're like, oh, what we saw 6 months ago, now we might need to shift. And it's figuring out how you splice, your personality as a brand now has so many layers like a cake. So the UGC piece, how do you do that in a way that's balanced so it doesn't degrade your luxury, your prestige, but demonstrates authenticity, demonstrates to your audiences, they feel they can trust it. But also you're building your own content in a way that feels like a pillar of the brand, that people know what it stands for, that it's, not just a, Instagram brand, for lack of a better term, and that it's this kind of, you're building this. And one of the hardest parts is we don't have heritage. So luxury brands that exist today have heritage, and they have years of building that heritage. So as you're building one in today's world, I think that playbook doesn't exist yet, because it's just starting of how do you build luxury and prestige in a space of TikTok and Insta Reels and live shopping, and keep that, special DNA and integrity.
Yeah, I love that so much. It's like, start leaning into consumers, but not at the expense of your brand, and continue to look for like those moments that you can own and help you build your own heritage. If I were to like try to like piece all of things together.
On theme, but definitely start leaning into community, going to know who your consumer is, start message testing. I'm really kind of excited to try AI message testing to scale before I put into media. So instead of wasting my money trying to figure out which works for which audience on which platform, doing it up front with AI platforms, because it's much more efficient than we have ever had before. I think that's a really exciting thing. And then creating that layer cake, continuing to build the heritage, the connection through community, through in real life experiences, through moments with everybody, not just the mentions, and building that piece as an element, but as you build kind of that authenticity on some of the platforms. And it's hard because, my social team's incredible, but like I'll see content and it's like a robot talking, and I'm like, but it's trending on TikTok, but does that feel on brand? And it's a constant dance of having to make that decision. I think it's one of the hardest things for brand stewards today.
Yes. It's like, it's not spray and pray. It's like, how do you find your authentic voice and continue to find those connections? I know we're about out of time, and because it's the end of the year and we're all feeling the love, and I loved the flowers from the last conversation, is there anyone that you want to give flowers to while we're sort of thinking about 2024?
I've always wanted to be on Ryan's Roses, and that never happened in my life when I lived in LA. So this is so exciting. As cheesy as this is, I would give them to my mom. My mom started a business out of necessity when I was 5, and I watched her grow it and have hard days, hard nights, like for 30 some years. And she didn't have a college education at the time, and she just figured it out. And I learned so much watching her, and I learned so much from her to this day from her experiences that allowed me to take the risks I take today. So I'd probably give them to my mom.
Oh my gosh. Go Erin's mom. That's so amazing. Well, you are a business maven and a wonderful human. And thank you for letting us learn from you today. And I think there was one comment in the chat that's like, what does Erin think great skin is today? So you can answer in the chat. And just thank you so much for all of the wisdom that you've shared with us today.
Thank you guys all for having me. I had a great time.
Oh, that was so good, you guys. I love it. I'm taking my mom on a cruise next week, and I was just feeling all gushy too. So thanks for the shout out for the mamas.
Of course.
Thanks everybody. Thank you, Haley.
Thanks, Andrea.
All right, next I would like to bring up Sean Walsh, SVP at VaynerMedia. Sean, how are you doing?
Hey, Andrea, I'm great. How are you?
Fantastic. I'm excited. We have next up Stephanie Dobbs Brown. She is the Chief Marketing Officer of ICE and New York Stock Exchange. She's responsible for the longest list of things. I'm not going to get into all of it. I'm going to let you guys just dive right on in. Thanks for joining, Stephanie.
Thanks so much, Andrea. Stephanie, great to see you. Thank you for joining us here on Marketing for the Now. I think Andrea gave a great transition. I think if we told everyone, as you and I were prepping, if we told everyone that you were the CMO of the New York Stock Exchange, I think everyone would head nod and say, of course I know what that is. ICE and Intercontinental Exchange, I think maybe a little bit less familiar. Before we get into 2024 and what you're most excited about, would love to have you kind of walk us through what your remit is at ICE and kind of the business, the broader business challenges you are looking to solve. Stephanie, I think you're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
There we go.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I was saying we could always, it's always good to start with ICE because with it gives context to what the New York Stock Exchange is. So ICE is big fintech company, and we really started in the exchange space. So the majority of our exchanges are actually futures exchanges. We also have equities exchanges, which is the New York Stock Exchange. We have a large data business, primarily in fixed income. And then we have a large and growing mortgage technology business. And so the question I always get is, well, what's the connection between all of them? And if you actually think about it, it does make strategically a lot of sense. We're really in the business of bringing buyers and sellers together. And so regardless of what part of the business we're talking about, whether it's futures or the New York Stock Exchange and equities, which is quite obvious that we're bringing buyers and sellers together. If you think about our mortgage business, same thing, right? Anybody who's ever had a mortgage, it's all about bringing buyers and sellers together. And that's really been our strategy and our playbook throughout our entire company's existence, which ICE has been around for about 25 years.
Awesome. It's a really helpful framework. And I think as we think about the construct of this conversation today, in terms of what you're most excited about for 2024, Gary and Jesse kicked today off kind of talking about this Japanese concept of misogi, right? And it's Jesse's big calendar. Curious, and I know we talked, there's a few things that you have top of mind, but if you had to pick one big thing that for ICE and New York Stock Exchange specifically in 2024 that you're most excited about to dive you and your organization into, what would that be?
AI.
AI.
AI has been around so long. Gen AI is so interesting. And I think it's one of those things that it's really easy to be scared of, but it's also the opportunities that it presents. I think both in terms of marketing and what we could be doing, and just from a human perspective, I think there's so much opportunity, scary stuff with that comes with it, but so much opportunity with AI.
So can you talk about how you guys are, because there are so many obviously applications of what that can mean for a business and different by sector. How are you all applying that today?
Yeah.
And then also kind of what are you looking to and what are you most excited about to apply it into kind of how you're going to bring your business, into 2024?
Yeah. So there's a few things that we've been doing when we think about AI. So there's one obvious place that we have focused a lot is around what content can we create just as marketers that are focused on such a hot topic. And I think a lot of people are doing that. A lot of people are doing it really well. We actually just launched a content series that was all around, we call it artificial intelligence. It's all around AI and art and bringing those two together. And we had thought, for us, creating really interesting content around this topic is really a way through when we think about reaching some of our audiences. And I'm really proud of the work that the team has done on that. I mean, we have gotten so much feedback and accolades on that. And I think it's because it's just really interesting. So the content is kind of one.
Yep.
For us, though, in terms of using AI and testing it, we've done a bunch of different things around that too. So, we look at even like creative production, how can we just be a lot more efficient in terms of we churn out so many assets every single day. So how can we use AI just to streamline that and make that more efficient? We've used it to even pressure test our own content that we create in creative. And sometimes it makes the work better. And sometimes, what we have, we're actually quite pleased with. We've used it to understand market sentiment. We've used it which for the NYSE is actually quite helpful because there's so much market sentiment. With ICE, not as much. So, but that's also been really interesting is the different applications depending on the topics that you're talking about.
Yep.
So we've sort of dabbled in it in a few different ways. But I think one of the interesting things that we've started to do is asking questions, even just in a recruiting process. I think as marketers, we always have to be thinking about what's coming next and being really curious about up and coming mediums. And AI is such an interesting way to get into somebody's way of thinking and their level of curiosity and how they approach new mediums. And are they hesitant by nature? Or are they more, are they more aggressive or open to sort of diving in? So it's really sort of been an interesting way to pressure test during the recruitment process.
It's so interesting you talk about that recruitment piece, and it makes so much sense when you hear a lot of the headlines around AI or it's going to take all of our jobs, whereas you're actually actively looking at it as a qualifier to hire people and to bring people to the organization, right? Which is that actually drives a lot with what Gary and Gary's put a lot of content on around that exact thing. It's less of this fear-based AI is going to take all our job, more of an opportunity of how do we as marketers in our field, but really more broadly, kind of take advantage of it, right? That's kind of how you're looking at it.
100%. I mean, is it going to take jobs? Will it take jobs? Yeah.
Sure.
I think when you think about sort of like any new innovation that happens, I mean, you can go back
to the computer, right?
And that's the case.
Yeah.
I think we have a choice as, are you led by fear or are you led by opportunity? And we try and approach it by opportunity. I think we can't change sort of the course of the direction that we're going as a society. Yep. And I think it creates a lot of opportunities. Now, all of that being said, I think that we are a very cautious organization. We're in financial services. And so we are very intentional about how we use it and we make calculated decisions around the application of it. But, we've said, let's try it and see.
It makes total sense. So we have about 2 minutes left. If there was one other big thing that whether big, exciting innovation or really practical kind of knowledge that marketers listening to this call could take into, especially B2B marketers heading into 2024, what would that be?
I mean, look, I think from a tool, I think LinkedIn, if you're talking B2B, like you got to be on LinkedIn in my opinion. I think LinkedIn year over year continues to work harder and harder for us. We get a ton of value out of their targeting and their data and analytics capabilities. And they're always churning out new tools and things to try and functionality. So that would be the one thing I would say as a marketer. If you're in B2B, go down that path.
I think it's such a great point. We talk about it all the time as underpriced attention. B2B, even in B2C, right? Reaching people as humans, but in the context of when they're spending time on LinkedIn, we see the same thing. Even though CPMs might be higher on a comparable note, what you're actually getting and the value and the context, we're actually seeing it pan out down the line. So we're seeing the exact same things.
I agree. And when you've got tight budgets, as Gary was talking about earlier, being really intentional, and LinkedIn does that for us.
Right. We don't have $14 million budgets potentially necessarily, right? So we have to be smart, right? So I guess the last thing before we left, I'm going to pick up on what Gary started and what Haley started. Any flowers that you would want to give out as we head into 2024 of 2023? I think that's a great.
So I'm going to go I loved the shout out to the mom. I'm going to actually go the other direction and do a shout out to my son, because I think in the same way, I think when you have to see the world through a kid's eyes, my son is 4, you look at everything differently, and it sort of allows you to really be empathetic and compassionate. And I think as marketers, that is one of, if not the most important skills that you have, is really being empathetic to who you're trying to communicate with. So my flower is for my son.
Wow. Well, I love that, Stephanie. If you had said that 8 weeks ago, I would not have understood it, but I had my first child 7 weeks ago.
Oh, no, congrats.
It resonates massively. And I couldn't have said it better myself. So I think with that, Super excited. Well, the last one, maybe a fun lucky strike extra here, Stephanie, as we were kind of chatting. Biggest flops in 2023, or biggest things that maybe we thought would have come to fruition and maybe didn't see. It's been a wild year in a couple different ways. So I didn't know if you had any thoughts there as well.
I don't know if I would say flop. I would say I think the sleeper tactic that is going to come back with a real force is going to be around VR, AR, immersive.
Yes.
I think, Gen AI has really taken mind share from everything and sort of sucked the air out of the room. But I think that when you start to think about immersive experiences and whatever that kind of looks like, yeah, I think that is going to end up really gaining traction and momentum again. So I wouldn't say it was a flop, but I think attention kind of was diverted from that.
Yeah.
And I think that will come back.
Yeah, it was kind of presented or talked about as this big silver bullet that was going to come and dominate. The metaverse was here, and it's kind of been a slower matriculation. But I totally agree. It's especially in that augmented reality space.
Yeah.
I mean, just curious. I mean, some folks are probably thinking, well, how would the New York Stock Exchange or how does that and AR, VR, how does that even make sense or compute? Like, how are you all thinking about that?
So we partnered with Unity Technologies to create an immersive experience around the bell ringing. So we open and close the markets with a bell ringing every single day. And oftentimes you have to be in the building to be able to do that. And of course, COVID changed everything around that. And so we worked with Unity to create really a virtual experience to kind of open up that moment for more people.
Yeah.
And it just got us thinking around what else can we do, especially for the New York Stock Exchange, when it is kind of a building that you kind of come into. I mean, it has lots of extensions around the world, but it's got us thinking a lot around not just the New York Stock Exchange, although that's more applications around that, but certainly around how we market.
Sure.
And again, I think as we kind of right size, the attention around AI, I think immersive is going to come back in a big way. And I think that they will intersect in a really, really big way.
100%. It's a really interesting application to hear you talk about that as well for your industry, your specific, it's a new frontier of building those brand connections, right? And it's like, marketers, back to your curiosity point, marketers that will win. This is our hypothesis, which, starts with Gary and matriculates through our organization, but marketers that are going to be curious and follow attention, and especially are there when it's underpriced or early and really figure out are going to be able to win and scale.
I think you're spot on. I think if you're following attention and you are asking questions and you're not afraid to try things, I think it was Dena that maybe had talked about sort of trying new things. I think sky's the limit.
Sky is the limit. I couldn't agree more. I think we're coming up here on time. Oh, there we go. And I sense Andrea was coming. I could feel your presence, Andrea.
You guys are amazing. Thank you so much for all that you shared.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Stephanie.
All right. Thank you, Sean. Last but not least, if we can welcome up Mary Kate McGrath, Chief Brand Officer from Gallery Media Group. Oh my goodness.
Hi, Andrea.
Are you live from Miami?
I'm live from Art Basel, where we talk about AI. We have the Meta and Ray-Ban event going on right now, right in front of me. So if I could turn my camera around, you'd see the green room and a lot of amazing things happening.
Well, we can feel the energy, and thanks so much for stepping out. We've got our final conversation. We're so happy to have you leading it. We are going to be welcoming up Claudine Patel, who's the Chief Marketing Officer at Sanofi. And Claudine happens to be a 25-year vet, despite the fact that we have to get all of her beauty recommendations.
Maybe 26 now, 27. I have lost count.
And she came from brands like Mondelez, Kellogg's, Mead Johnson, and Reckitt. So excited to have you, and I'll let you guys take it away.
Hi, Mary Kate.
Claudine.
Nice
Thank
to
you for
see you.
joining us today.
I was jealous, Miami.
It's nice. I can tell you that it's nice. It's going to be a good week. It's going to be a good week. What's on your mind? I think about when I read about how Stop, Start, and Continue started, right? It started out of an idea of Brigham Young, the idea of how to add value to your world. And you're such a value-led leader. What does it bring to mind for you when you're trying to add value? How do you personally look at Start, Stop, and Continue in your own world?
Well, first of all, I think it's hard, right? Because with every time you join a new organization or you're faced with new challenges, you try to always discard what has worked or worked well even from the past. And the way I try to manage Stop, Start, and Continue in my world is, especially with a lot of the recent roles I've been in, where I'm tasked with probably more transformative initiatives, I always try to think about uh, stop and continue through the lens of probably what has worked, so we don't discard all the good knowledge that has been done, right? And then I think it's always easy to say, let's start afresh. I'm coming to bring in all these new things into the world that I operate in, but it's always good to see what others have done and have been successful. So that I always look through that lens to see what we should be continuing. And then in addition to that, always tap into what the experience of others to see what we should be stopping. What has traditionally been things we've tried but may not have been so successful. It's okay to learn. It's okay to fail. I actually embrace that, and I always tell the teams I work with to operate with um, the idea of respectful candor, where we can always debate. So those are things we would eventually stop, and then naturally start is, the world is so dynamic in marketing that we always have to try to make sure we're in the forefront of trends and creativity, and tools that can create impact to the business, right? So naturally, in terms of starting, there's always starting with this sense of curiosity and instilling that mindset across the teams. And we try to then start what we believe are new and interesting things to build into the virtuous cycle of start, stop, continue, right? So, like more recently, I think and I heard the previous speaker speak about a lot of things around generative AI, VR, AR, and the comeback of that, right? The new opportunities for immersive experience. I think those immersive experiences, I think those are things we continue to evaluate and think about starting and evolving. I'm actually very fortunate to work with a team that has a lot of that fringe tech background as well. So we're having fun exploring new things.
I love it. I love it. How do you personally do it yourself as a leader? How do you use that philosophy or that framework for yourself? Not just the business, but like, what do you personally looking forward to 24?
Yeah.
Can you name some concrete things that you are looking to start, stop, and continue?
Personally, in terms of, so, I've joined Sanofi this year. If I look and reflect, um, I think where I'd like to continue is the ability to continue to debate and drive a healthy kind of respectful candor culture, right? Because we're going through, continued optimization. I mean, the consumer health industry is challenging. It is tough, but I feel like I'm working with a team of fighters, that love the idea of continuing to have really candid conversations. So I believe we're making traction. I think initially, naturally being new, there's been a little bit of hesitation, right, to come to the table and actually talk and debate about things that's working, not working. But I feel like I've actually, myself and the team has embraced that spirit. And so moving into next year, I think that's one thing personally from a values led perspective. I want to make sure we continue with the team. I
I
think
love
where we want to stop is, once again, this has been a hard year for us, a challenging year, right? Just because of headwinds in the industry. But naturally, once again, going through how do we think about continued success moving into 24. And so what I'd like to stop is, eventually fear has to go away, um, to be able to enable us to move faster with more agility, with more passion for taking some calculated risk. So the stopping the fear and squishing the fear of failure is what I would say I would continue to encourage us and even me to stop. And then in terms of starting, um, I'm excited. Once again, we're trying a lot of new things and coming out of the stop start. Um, I think next year is going to be fun. I'm actually really looking forward to flip the page in terms of more that we can do on the business and within our marketing community. Once again, I love the idea of fringe tech. I love the idea of thinking about leading with design thinking and areas of we can impact the brands and the business with sustainability as well. So a lot of these initiatives, I feel we're just starting out, and so I'm excited to see how we as a team, from a values perspective, continue to squish fear of failure, embrace respectful candor because it pushes us to be better as a team, and just continue to start to have fun,
Yeah.
figuring out new ways to impact the business in a really positive way.
I think you nailed it, right? Like the starting seems easy because you're excited by a new idea. It's not. It's a big load.
Yeah.
The continuing is what we all done, and we've rested on our laurels. The stopping is sometimes really hard for your team, and it sounds like that radical candor that you have them experiencing and feeling is such a lubricant to those conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. But to your point, it's not easy, right?
No,
Everybody will be
no.
at different points of the journey.
Yeah.
So patience is needed, but also deliberateness is needed in terms of how do you figure out use cases, right? The language we use in our worlds, how do we figure out value-based use cases that we can make sure that there are people within the teams that can showcase how that is done, and you figure out a way to amplify that behavior, amplify that thought, that thinking across the organization.
Outside, we talked about how you as a leader look at Start, Stop, and Continue, how you as a team embody that and embrace that. What would you love the marketplace to stop doing in 2024?
That's a loaded question.
With all due respect and all love, but just what
Yeah.
are you excited maybe to see less of next year?
I have to be honest. I am not sure. The reason why I say that is I've learned so much from brands or or depending, right? Because values eventually move to actions and then it moves to impact to the business, right? And so
Yeah.
I would say I've learned so much from what I've seen to be working from a leadership standpoint, but also what I've seen to not be working, and through that I actually learn of how I can apply these lessons to myself and the way I lead and the way I encourage my teams to lead, right? So, but then from a business standpoint, I also think just looking at, I'm sure, I don't know what happens internally in many of these organizations, but I can imagine only how certain um, leads, right, within the organizations push for change, but it's not everything is always done right, right? To your point about the stop, start, continue. So I've seen how that has impacted brands in maybe negative ways too. Once again, I think it's good to think about the lessons learned and apply it back to either the business or the way you lead, right? I think the key values, once again, if I take a step back, is really you can learn from anything. Don't be afraid to try. But at the end of the day, if you lead with your values and you lead with a certain sense of authenticity, it's going to play out, however, which way where people can also get lessons from the marketplace. So I don't know. I don't know what I would necessarily want to
No,
see less
I
of.
hear it. Yeah, I think that it's interesting. I think it goes back to what you were saying before. I think that you are somebody who sees the opportunity and you see the what lies ahead. You seem to be somebody who is a real growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. It's something that we've kind of I've seen over your posts and kind of some of the things you've written and been in conversations about. How do you embody your team to see next year as all the opportunities that you see?
It's not easy, because sometimes, because once again, you have, working with teams, especially larger teams in some of these larger organizations, everybody moves at different pace and are at different parts of embracing change, right? And so I would say that the one thing I've noticed to be very helpful is I guess in the tech world of, once again, use cases, I would apply that to, are there a few people you believe that can be champions within your team to help drive that change with you, right? And then I was just having a conversation this morning with someone on my shopper team, Marlo, and I was talking, I mean, she came up with a really great idea and she wanted some time to just kind of bounce some of these ideas with me. And I'm like, why don't we figure out a way to and she was actually thinking about using a use case too, and working with one of our brand leads within the organization. I'm like, why don't you use that use case and we'll find a forum for you to show the team's thinking,
I
right?
love it. I love it.
How you plan to exploit the opportunity and and maybe even highlight some of the challenges that you see moving ahead. But there's nothing like tangibility. There's nothing
No.
like seeing how other people are mobilizing them and their cross-functional teams or their teams to be able to drive change.
For
And
sure.
I get inspired by that too, because I learn from others as well. I'm not precious about where the idea comes from, and we shouldn't be, right? Or who wants to champion that change. If you just affect one more person, if you learn from one more person, I think that's where the spirit really comes alive. So
Yeah.
once again, you don't see half the time I'm tired and in bed by 9 p.m. But what you do see is moments of what I do see is moments of sparks where I get really excited, and
I love
I
it.
get energy from others and from the teams that I work with.
Where else do you get this energy
Where
from?
else?
Is it
Yeah.
LinkedIn? Is that community? Is it mentors in the space? Is it, it's interesting, like when you come to different events like Art Basel and things like this, where you kind of put
Yeah.
yourself in new
Oh
perspectives.
yeah. Oh, are
It's
you
hard.
there right now?
I'm here right now.
Oh
I
my
hope
God.
there's not like bass in the background of this DJ, but
I can hear it though.
oh, you can? Oh gosh. But when you see big sky and big, vistas, you kind of think bigger, right? It's the same thing I think that happens in Cannes, and
Yeah.
it happens at offsites. It happens in many different ways. When you kind of move yourself out of the norm, you start thinking. It's why holiday rejuvenates everyone, and you come back a little fresher and maybe with the spark of a new thing. Where do you find your inspiration?
The cop out word is
Okay, you can do a
everywhere.
cop out.
No,
Yep.
but I'm gonna expand on that. So I've always told people I am what you would call an introverted extrovert. I um talking to people saps my energy, and actually
Yeah.
I need to go to bed earlier. So maybe from 9 p.m. I'll go to bed by 7, right? But where I find but where I am extremely I always try to go to events. I always try to meet new people, um, people that are different or bring diverse thinking to how I've traditionally saw things, excite me, and actually gives me the energy. So I would say it comes from everywhere, especially with people that comes to the table with different opinions that I can actually learn from. So for me, I feel like I always try to go out there, and I actually told someone that I work with as well, right? Once again, I go back to learning and sourcing ideas from everywhere. uh it was someone actually within my team, and he was like, okay, he always jokes like, okay, this is career suicide, right? But I'm like, I love it. I love debating because I actually learn from you, and I think you
Yeah,
push me to think a little bit differently, and I may be wrong.
for
Who's right
sure.
all the time, right? So
I think,
that's
yeah.
where I actually believe people with divergent backgrounds and diverse thinking and thought leadership can actually challenge you to be better, and that's where I always try to source or meet people to get those different experiences. Gary Vee, for example, right? I mean, like, he's sometimes I'm like, what are you saying, dude? But like I'm like, but I mean, I learn from him too, because his thinking is so divergent that he comes with multiple different perspectives that sometimes you don't
I
even
know.
see.
I know. I mean, Gary is in his own other world. But what I will say about Gary is one of the things I love about him the most, and there are many, is when you're at a table with Gary and you have a differing opinion, he takes that as an invitation to
Yes.
start an incredible discourse. He has enough people agreeing with him. It's the moment. I think you're right. I think for marketing and for the marketers like ourselves, like, we have to look for the new, right? We have to be there early and
Yeah.
often. So if we're not there, if we're not really welcoming in a different perspective all of the time, I think that's where we lose sight. I think that's my
Yeah.
start for next year too. I think that's like put myself in very strange and new places.
Absolutely, because I think, listen, I am a big DE&I champion. I think we want to make sure we build an inclusive culture, right? But inclusivity, and in conversations, we always forget that inclusivity is also a mindset, right? And so, outside of making sure we bringing different people to the table, I think the one
Yeah.
thing we need to also realize is we need to bring different thinking and mindsets to the table, right? And I think for that, I'm actually a big champion of. and I can't get enough of it, because to be honest with you, I'm not that smart. Where I've been fortunate enough is to work with people that are, and it has allowed me to continue to learn from experiences and to just be better, And so
Claudine, I think we
love
think
it.
you are very smart, and we are very impressed. And I'm sad to see Andre here because I could talk to you all day. But thank you so much.
And we would love it. I tend to agree. I think that's where we have to draw the line, Claudine. You are incredibly smart, and I think we should go and pack our bags right now and meet Mary Kate at the
Come on
gallery
down, everyone. Come on
Archive
down.
in Basel. What do you say?
Give me 4 hours or maybe 3 hours. I think from Chicago to there, it's like 2.5, 3 hours. So I'll see you.
Okay, we'll see you there. Thanks, you two. This was a phenomenal
Thank
way
you.
to end our 2023 Marketing for the Now with such heart. Thanks to you both.
Love it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you to all of our viewers. We just so enjoy these times of gathering up. We're going to have another show in 2024 on January the 18th, and it's going to be from 12:30 to 1:30 Eastern time. And until then, please feel free to go back. We record all of these episodes as well. Feel free to go back and check them out on YouTube. We get 100,000 views every time, and we can't thank you guys enough for all of your support. And we will see you in January of 2024. Thanks, everybody.